Hey there, I'm Lori, and this is my sewing room. I gave a tour of my sewing room several months ago when I explained what I liked about my sewing room and what I was hoping to change about my sewing room in the not too distant future. Well, the time has come for me to make the renovation. I'm on summer break. I'm a teacher, so I'm on summer break, and this is my chance to finally get my project done. My husband and I had a trip earlier in the month of July, and so I didn't want to start anything until after I got back from the trip. Well, so we drove up to Indiana to visit family. That's where I'm originally from. And it was about a 10-day trip total. We even took our dog with us, so that was a new experience for all of us. It was a wonderful trip, but I'm ready now to get down to work and do some improvements to my sewing room. So here we go. Good morning. Okay, it's not really morning. It's actually noon, but I'm not a morning person. I'm getting started. It's morning for me. So I went yesterday and bought the supplies and thought that I would be able to get started actually doing some work, but I'm not as young as I used to be, and carrying all those heavy sheets of plywood wore me out. So I'm making a fresh start today, and my goal for today is to put in, see if I can show this, put in the row of wood screwed into the studs along the wall to support the back part of the plywood. The plywood that goes over the counters doesn't really need a front support other than on the side. But I also have an issue with back here. There is an electrical outlet that I haven't been making use of because it's hidden behind that cabinet. And I don't have so many electrical outlets in here that I can afford to cover one up and not use it. So I think what I'm going to do is drill a hole in the back of the cabinet that sits in front of it so that when I need to, I can pull the drawer out and access that plug in some way. So I'm going to need to do that before I do anything else, so that when I'm ready to put that cabinet in, it'll have that space ready to go. So I'm going to go have to find my jigsaw, because I need to cut a little square out of it. So I'm going to go bring the wood in, and I've already got my box of tools, and we're going to get started. All right, I'm having to pause in this part of the new table because I have a light that is mounted to the underside of that shelf, and it's plugged into the outlet that is almost directly below, behind that cabinet that doesn't have any drawers. And in order for me to make the counter flush up against the wall the way I want to, I would have to cut a notch in the plywood, and I have done that in the past, but this time I just can't bring myself to do it. I spent so much money on this plywood. It was more expensive than I had intended to pay. And so my husband has offered to add an electrical outlet for me up to the left of that shelf there, which would allow me to plug it in without using that outlet. Unfortunately, he is injured at the moment. He's injured his foot, and so he's hobbling around, and so he's not going to be able to do it for at least a little while. So I'm going to put that on hold while he recuperates, and I'm going to move on to this part, and this part is going to be the L shape that is at desk level rather than counter height level. So I'm going to add in the brace along there, and then I'm going to use some L brackets to add an additional brace that comes out and is supported by 3 legs. And then I can go ahead with that. That is semi-functional as it is. I mean, I can't attach anything because he's going to need to get into that area behind that one cabinet. But it's better than putting a hole in that plywood. So that's where I am on that now. So I'm going to continue with what I can do and see how we go. Okay, So let me tell you how I came up with my measurements, because that might be helpful. So the cabinets are about 34 inches high. They're standard kitchen height cabinets. But for the sit-down part, I looked it up online to see what is an ideal height, and I found a lot of conflicting advice, but the range that I found was between 28 and 32 inches. That's the range. And one video I found said that you should sit in your chair with your knees at 90-degree angles and your feet flat on the floor. And I noticed in my previous configuration that when I had been sitting at my sewing table for a while, when I got up, I felt like my legs were a little bit numb, and I think it's because I had my chair sitting too high. And so I, lowered it down, and then they said measure from your elbow to the floor, and for me that was just a tad over 29. So I am setting my counter height at 29 inches. Okay, a little break there. As I mentioned, my husband is laid up with a bad foot, so I had to, he called me on the Alexa, so I had to go see what he needed. Bless his heart. So the next thing then is going to be to use a couple of L brackets and put another piece coming out. And I'm going to make it less. My counters are all going to be 26 inches in depth. But I don't want the support rail to come all the way out. I think I'm going to make the support rail come out to about 22 inches, and I'm going to attach them with L brackets, and then it'll go the full length of that wall before I start making the L. And that's why I needed something to function as legs, because that's obviously there's going to need to be a leg there to support that. So that's the next step. Okay, a little update. I haven't videoed as much of this as I had intended because, well, for one, it's been very slow going, because I get winded and then I have to stop for a while. But, so let me back up so you can see the whole thing. All right, this is where I am so far. And this is the frame that should hold the plywood that will serve as the table. And I've used my level as I've gone along to make sure that it's within a reasonable amount of being level. So I have put L brackets in the corners. I added an additional brace here for strength, and I added another one here, right here. I also added another leg there, and I think I might try to add a leg here as well. I don't know. And then the next thing I need to do is I decided to do these little braces, but getting them screwed in is tricky because it's at an angle. So I want to put a brace here on this leg, another on this leg, and then another one on that leg to give it more strength, because even though it's attached here, you know, reasonably well, there's nothing to keep it straight, and that's what I want to make sure of. So hey there. So the room is done. It took a little longer than I expected, and I postponed making this kind of wrap-up segment of the video until I got a few little things done. I got the tables done a couple of days ago, but I had to order the drawer unit that I'll show you here in a minute, and wait for it to come in the mail. But it's here, and I have tweaked a couple of little things that weren't perfect. But let me turn this around and give you the tour. All right, so as you enter the room, the first thing you see is my dress form that I call Mrs. Danvers. I think I explained that in my previous video, and I will do my best to keep the camera steady. So as you come in, the first thing is the L, and that's where my sewing machine sits. And this unit here, I went, there's an IKEA here in town, so I was able to go and order that online and then just go pick it up. This one, however, IKEA no longer sells on their website. It's the Halifax unit, and I had to buy it off of eBay and then wait for it to come in the mail. So I have all of my supplies that used to be housed in that plastic drawer unit in there as well as in here. And then I took out the thread that used to be in this bottom drawer unit and I transferred it, see if I can show you, down here. So there's this here. I'm gonna see if I can find a better way to set it up. And then I made out of cardstock little bins that have my colors, my threads arranged by color. That's going to be, I think, really handy to have all this. I got these drawer organizers from IKEA while I was there. So this unit, I could not use the smaller Alex unit because it's too tall to fit. The clearance on my table is only 27.5 inches, and the other Alex unit is too tall for that. This one is 26, and so the clearance is perfect on it. Now, I pointed out before that I initially wanted to get 3 new pieces of plywood, and it's cabinet grade plywood, so it's a lot more expensive than the stuff they use for subfloors, because it's got a really nice smooth finish and there are no knot holes marring it. And because it was so expensive, I just couldn't bring myself to buy the 3rd sheet. So I ended up reusing what had been over here. I just transferred it here. I turned it over, sanded it down, and repainted it. This time I used paint that is meant for kitchen and bathroom cabinets so that you don't get that stickiness. Before I used wall paint. And my mats, whenever I would lift them up, here I'll show you, whenever I would lift them up, there would be that sticky sound. Well, you don't have that now, right? Because I got a better kind of paint. All right. Now, the real test for this was I sat down and sewed on it last night, because the test of the table is to see, is the table going to shake when I go really fast? And the answer was yes, it did shake, and it shook too much. So my husband added, I don't know if I can show you underneath here, he added a cross beam of a 2x4 across the back and then nailed the top to it so that when I sewed on it again, no shaking. All right, so that solved that problem. The other problem that I had was figuring out how to plug in my lights without drilling holes in my new plywood. And what saved me was that my my old piece that is not such a nice piece already has holes drilled into it. So I ended up making use of those. There's one here and there's one over there. And so that allowed me to plug in my lights the way I like. Now this used to be a lot longer and I had it held down by clamps because you know these swing arm lamps always come with a screw-on type of clamp that is made out of plastic, and they are pretty useless because they can't hold the weight of the swing arm, you know, being out here. So what I had previously done was take 2 long pieces of wood, drill a hole in it, and then I had clamped it to my tabletop here. But that wasn't going to work anymore. I wanted to attach it in a more permanent way. So my husband screwed it to the table from the bottom, which yes, it did put a hole in it, but it's a smaller hole. If ever I needed to move it, I could fill those in with wood putty. I couldn't really do that if I drilled an 1.5 inch hole there. So, and of course what I have on the wall pretty much stayed the same. My husband did put this together for me because this TV used to sit on top of the chest of drawers that sat here, and I moved that out to give me more tabletop room. And I do like the fact that it sits higher. It gives me more counter space there, and I like that it sits up higher. I like having the TV up higher. So now this cabinet used to sit over, there was a gap here, and I had a chair so that I could use that as a seat. I decided to get rid of that, shift that counter down, and now I just have the one chair, and I think it gives it a tidier look. All right. Then the next thing is that shelf, once I shifted that cabinet, once I shifted it down, then that meant the shelf up here was off center. And so I took the brackets down and I went and got something a little bit, I don't know, I thought they were a little bit more decorative than what I had up there. It was pretty utilitarian. And let me show you. So I shifted, since I was going to have to move it anyway, I shifted it down, and I got nicer brackets here. And then my husband put in this electrical outlet because my 2 light fixtures that are underneath here, let me see if I can show you. See the light fixture there, and then I went and got another one there. So I needed to plug them in, and I didn't want to plug them in down below and, like I said, drill a hole in the counter. So my husband, by moving it up here, I wrapped this one around, and I can just hide it behind the things that I keep up here. But he had to put a little notch, I don't know if you can see that, yeah, a little notch there to allow the second light to plug in. And then I just have it hidden behind my little, you know, decorative items. So, all right, so I think that's it. I did take down a few things off the wall. I thought it was looking a little bit, oh, it's kind of dark there. I thought it was looking a little bit crowded. On my recent trip up to Indiana to visit family, my sister gave me some things that had belonged to my grandmother, and this was hers that she used to keep herself organized. And even these little notes here were written by her. She passed away quite a few years ago, but I like having that there. So I just moved it over there. And then this bin, these are my patterns and things that I need to access. These are my other patterns that I print like off the internet, and I keep them all, let me show you. I keep them labeled. I do a block of the month class at my local quilt store. So I just took, it's nothing fancy, I just took little Post-its and made labels so that I can find things. And when I buy something, a pattern off the internet, I print it out and I can put it in this notebook. And then this pink bin, that's going to be my next big project. It is the Lori Holt quilt along from, I want to say last year. It's the one with the granny chic fabric. That's my next big project. Before I get to that, though, I have a couple little ones that I want to get done. Let me turn off this light so you can see. So yeah, so that helped a lot. And so once I took my thread out of here, that freed up those drawers. So I took out the things that used to be in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand my little system here. And again, this is based on Lori Holt's. It's nowhere near as extensive as hers, but I used her idea to try to organize my scraps in a way that I can make use of them better. And so yeah, so that is it. My sewing room is, my little dog. My sewing room is done, and I could not be happier. I am actually ecstatic. All right, thanks so much for watching.